thank you for coming on this evening. I appreciate your taking the time. It's a great pleasure for us to have you as a guest.
Well,
And
thanks very much for having me, Kevin. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you and people listening. My name is Mike Jeffries, and I am the author of A Family's Heartbreak, A Parent's Introduction to Parental Alienation, and welcome to Men Matter. A Family's Heartbreak is really the story of a parent's process of losing his child to parental alienation. It's my story. I worked with a psychologist, Dr. Joel Davies. He was also the psychologist that worked with me when I was going through my process, so he knew my story intimately. And then we turned my story into the book.
we're both kind of in the same parental alienation cruise line, so to speak. I found your book too late, but absolutely valuable, both for dealing with alienation, how it affects fathers, families, especially children, and the process by which engulfing of families by both the court system and what I call the support system in the court slash allegation slash divorce system, which is virtually insurmountable in general, but utterly insurmountable without being forewarned and having a guideline to address all the aspects of it. And I think that your book is hands down one of the very best writings on identifying and dealing with the overall process. Maybe over complimentary, but I wish I'd have found this many years ago. Where were you when I needed you, so to speak?
Yeah, I was probably going through it myself, and it's very, very hard when you're in the middle of it to write about it objectively. So one of the real gifts I think we deliver with The Family's Heartbreak, it's a very objective account of parental alienation from both the alienated father's perspective, from the child's perspective, from the alienating parent's perspective, even the perspectives of the lawyers and the mental health professionals that get involved in the case. But you're right, Kevin, it is a process, and I've been at it for many, many years, and the process is ongoing. Obviously, it is not the same for me at this point as it was when the alienation occurred and when I was in the throes of the emotions and the anger and the hopelessness and the frustrations. But it is a process that stays with us, and how we manage that process is really the key to whether we will have a relationship with our children again and whether we will be emotionally healthy human beings.
And I think that's one of the biggest messages I got from your book and from your experience was, while you're treading water, it's almost impossible to remain objective to the situation, to see an overall picture or direction that you might go in. You're so busy getting the next breath, which for me meant seeing the kids the next time, what do I do, that you really don't have that perspective to think, okay, I'm thinking 2, 3, 4 down the road, and not having that perspective, particularly not having perhaps support staff or attorneys who may be well ingrained with how this works. Well, that's just a horrible feeling of hopelessness. I know it was for me.
This concept of treading water is just so key. You know, I saw a motivational speaker just a couple of weeks ago. She was a mountain climber. She climbed Mount Everest. And do you know, when you're at the top of Mount Everest, you have to take one step and then literally count to 10 before you can take another step, because that's how hard it is at that altitude to move your body forward. And parental alienation is very, very much like that. We can only focus on the very next step. We can't look ahead. We can't see the forest for the trees. We can't kind of get that 30,000 foot objective picture that we can with a little distance. So it really is a one step at a time process, and you just want to get through the next day, or you just want to get through the next hour. And while all this is going on, you've got the alienating parent and you've got the alienating parent's attorneys constantly putting you on a defensive, and they are constantly firing at you and making you react to something else. So it's a very, very difficult position to be in and get some perspective.
And that's a key point. I think that a lot of people who've been through this find themselves unprepared for the vilification that goes on toward you as a father or a mother, whoever may be in that position of being the targeted parent. It's almost overwhelming. I know in my case and other people I've talked to, it's this can't be real. No one would say that about me, much less believe it. And lo and behold, it's true on both parts.
In retrospect, it's very funny. It wasn't very funny at the time, but I was getting hit with the most absurd allegations that I really was taking a step back and thinking to myself, could I have done that? Do I sleepwalk? Do I call people on the phone and black out and not remember it? There was a period of time where I was really starting to question my own sanity. And of course, the allegations get so absurd.
If you were to go back with what you know now, and you were to be walking through this and you had a chance to speak to someone who was about to start out, I know what I would say. As soon as the first sign, you describe how this came out of nowhere for you. Just poof, is this happening? It's all new. What advice would you give someone who finds himself on the receiving end of an allegation or an accusation for kind of staying calm and suppressing your disbelief and actually believe it's happening, but stay objective? How would you coach someone to say, okay, I heard about this, I'm going to back up? What would you say to them?
That when you are in the midst of these allegations and when you are in the midst of parental alienation, you have to become a combination of Gandhi and Mother Teresa. So if they are saying that you are this hothead who goes off the handle at the drop of a hat, and they can push your buttons to get you to do exactly that, well, then the perception becomes the reality. And it doesn't matter that it was a isolated incident. If it happens once, the label sticks, and that's who you are. To the extent possible, and I know this is very, very hard, you really do have to take the attitude that I am not going to respond to anything. I am not going to react to anything. I am not going to give them what they want, because what they want is a reaction that will end up helping them and hurting me.
Yeah, I've heard of that in the past referred to as taking the high road. And I read a number of people who have also taken sort of a different opinion to that, and that is that once you find yourself in that stead, the best defense is a good offense. Not that you're going to fabricate things, but charge at it as hard as you can, not because you may personally want to do that, but because the workings of the justice system in most situations revolve around the concept of adversarial action, that somehow the truth is arrived at after the fight. The one who stands up as the winner must be right. That sort of attitude of adverse counsel. You find yourself thinking, how's this going to affect the kids? So you try and back off. And we've all had that experience where you say to yourself, and I wish I'd have been a lot more aggressive with this or that, and the court will figure this out, if I'm a nice guy. But I haven't found that to be true. Is there any experience like that might...
Actually, Kevin, I agree with the authors who say, go at it as hard as you can. In A Family's Heartbreak, we write about that quite extensively because time is the alienating parent's best weapon. And the longer that this alienating parent can have you playing defense, essentially, and responding to all the crazy allegations and have you on your heels rather than moving forward, the more time they have to manipulate the child and brainwash the child and really entrench those parental alienation behaviors. When I talk about being Gandhi, I'm talking about not responding to the provocation.
Yes, that is true. And I wasn't saying that you didn't advocate that in the book. That's very clear that your position is to make your stand and don't waver. That's very clear. I think part of the question was, there's a natural inclination within the court to say, all right, let's take a little, let's have the friend of the court or someone do a look-see at this for 60 days and 90 days, and then we'll have someone will take classes. And it's just this wishy-washy approach, which leaves, frankly, the kids in the lurch.
Dr. Kevin Maguire is the host of Men Matter on syndicatednews.net. Join him Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also on syndicatednews.net is John McEwen's American Music Show. John is one of the founders of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. His show is on Sunday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also on syndicatednews.net is the 2011 Pulitzer Prize nominee in the category of history, Mr. Richard S. Lowry. His show is called Lowry Leaks.